the video last week, right, baby? So we weren't able to get the video, which is what I was waiting on to send the email, and then I realized it wasn't working, and then I forgot. So sorry you didn't get an email this week, but you all showed up, even though I didn't email you. Good job. So anyway, yes, we're hopefully recording it this time, maybe. So if there's some friends that you were like, oh, that was good, you should watch this, but you might not. But if you do, there you go.
All right, just a quick disclaimer before we jump in tonight. We're going to be talking about a topic that we are going through. Anybody ever, you try to teach someone something, and God puts that on your heart, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I suck at this. Anybody? Okay, so that's us tonight. We're the people that are trying to teach you something that are still trying to learn it. So, can you guys give us some grace and mercy tonight?
We're not perfect.
We're not perfect. Surprise.
We're not.
Anyway, all right, so our kids aren't though. They're very perfect.
Oh. Yes.
All right, so tonight it's just going to be a little real, and I don't know how much we're going to say. We didn't plan a lot of this, so if we say some things, it's just like...
We didn't plan how vulnerable we would be, so we'll just see how vulnerable we choose to be tonight.
So we're going to talk about being busy. Anybody busy? Any busy people in the room?
Should be everyone, right? I would assume.
It's so easy. I know people. It's so cliche now, and it's cliche for a reason, right? Because it's true. Like someone asks you, like, "Hey, how you doing?" And you're like, "What? I'm
busy."
Busy. And a couple of you didn't know this, but we have 4 kids, and we are busy, and we just decided to move, and that was bad timing. In the midst of the craziest season of the year. But anybody ever thought hey, it's just gonna get easier after this happens,
If
right?
we just get to this, then it'll all be better after this. That never happens.
Yeah.
Never happens.
And there's this word called no that's really hard to use. I mean, who's good at the no word?
Yeah, good job, guys.
Look at
Good
your
job.
spouse. Who's better at saying no? Raise your hand.
Probably him.
Who's better at saying no?
Who's the people pleasers? Who says yes to everything? I will help you. I will.
We're both people pleasers, which is really bad.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened.
I don't
We're
know.
Can you do this? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
We have more time. Pastor Tom comes up, hey, can you do this?
Absolutely.
Yes, of course.
We'll do
it's
it
really
all.
hard to say no to your boss, especially,
That too.
right? How many people are good at telling your boss no?
Ooh, man, some of you. You guys are awesome.
They say that people, you get respected more when people say
Yeah.
no things, which is really hard. Anyway, so tonight we're talking about that. I'm going to just use a quick illustration to talk about time. And so I'm going to ask Jan to hold this little platter here. It's a football platter. In honor of the fact that the Broncos lost. I don't know why. They should have won. He was wide open in the end zone. Anyway, I used to be a server, and I got into trouble because I was trying to do too much, and I realized that they only give you 3 tables for a reason, or 4 tables. Any other servers in the room, you used to serve food, or you still do? Anyway, I realized they have those tray tables, they have the really big ones. I used to work at Red Robin. Yum. Anyway, I used to carry those, but I used to always get in trouble because I tried to do too much. I tried to put too many plates on that big heavy tray. And so I'm going to just illustrate this tonight. How many people have a lot on your plate right now? Okay. What are some things that maybe you have on your plate? Just raising your hand, shout them out to me. Work. How many people have a job? Okay, jobs. Okay, that's good. Let's put the job, the job is a big rock. Okay, it's a heavy rock. Maybe I should get started. Can you do it? Okay. Who thinks she can do it? All right. You don't have a job? Oh, wait. She does have a job with me. Those who don't know, Joanna doesn't get paid to do this. She does it on the mercy of her heart, working a lot of hours. Anyway, so your job, paying the bills, that's important, right? Kind of have to do that. Bible says something about if you don't eat, if you don't work, you don't eat, right? So that's something we all have. What else is on your plates? Kids. Who has kids? A lot of room. Not this table. They're not there yet. Okay. It's okay. All right. So those of you that
Jesus, we have to say yes.
Yes, we have to say
We're
yes.
the only ones who can fill someone's need,
Yes,
but we're not.
we have to tell ourselves that, and really God is like, hey, God, John, this is my church. Like, I built this church. Like, you don't have to work harder because I'm gonna keep it working without you.
Yeah.
But only you can be Joanna's husband. So do a better job of that before you start doing more things here. Is that speaking to anybody tonight? I know for us, like, it's such a hard thing. And that's why you're here, right? You're here to prioritize your marriage. And you're here to say no to a couple things so that you can work on the most important thing. That is the person next to you.
On the flip side of that, for a wife, how easy it is to get caught up in all of these little things that we think are important, but somebody else could do them. Like, if you literally are spending all of your time cooking and cleaning and you don't have time for your husband, like, hey, if you need to just say, we're going to get a house cleaner, then do it. You know, if you have to say, like, there are other things that other people can do, but only I can be his wife. Only I can fulfill his needs, like we talked about 2 weeks ago. So what are those, like, if your time is so full with, like, menial tasks, you know, like keeping the house clean, or you know, maybe you just need to find what do you call those little kids that come over? A mama's helper, you know? I don't know, maybe you need once a week just a mama's helper so that you can, like, take a nap, so that when he comes home that night, date night, you're not like, peace out, I'm going to sleep early. You know, whatever it is, there are things that only we can do as a spouse, and we have to make sure that we are not trading those things for something that, like he said, even if it's at work, that somebody else can do. A lot of times when we just say yes, 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 there's somebody else that could have grown if they would have been allowed the chance to do that. If we would have said no, somebody else could have stepped up, and it would have helped them, actually, because they would have learned. But we're like, I'm the only one who can do it. I have to say yes. But maybe we're not the only one who can do it, but we are the only one who can parent our children. We are the only one who can be a spouse and fulfill our spouse's needs, right? Yeah. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
All right.
She's on a roll. Keep going.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about a little book that I kind of read. You'd think, it's only like 30 pages. You'd think I would have actually read the whole thing by now. Anyway, I didn't still read the whole book. It's called The Tyranny of the Urgent, but the whole premise of the book is that the urgent things always win out over the important, because they scream louder, right? Our kids are hungry, and they are so much louder than my spouse who walks in the door, and I don't even acknowledge him because I'm like, I just have to feed these children because they're screaming, right? It's the urgent things, like this email that pops up. I think that's the worst thing about our phones, is like the notifications. It's like you feel this need to answer every text the minute you get it, right? And you feel this need to clear your notifications, like, oh, I can't stand that there's a little one on the Facebook app. I have to open it. And you open it and you're just like, it's another spam or what, you know, you're like, why did I open this? And then you end up, right, just wasting your time. But it's like those things that feel so urgent. Like, I have to respond to this email right now. Or my boss called and they were like, I need you to come in tonight. And you're like, I have to. This is urgent, right? And some urgent things you can't get out of. Like, your kid's sick, you got to leave work, you got to go get your kid, or whatever. But it always feels like those urgent things, like for him, he left to go fix the roof on our renter's house. And I already had a bad day, and then he just left, and I was like, okay, now I have to cook dinner and put the kids to bed and everything else. And it was like, it was an urgent thing, and it was important, right? I mean, they had like water going through the ceiling. It was bad. But what do you do in order to make sure that the urgent doesn't always win out over the important, right? That's kind of the question. And the crazy thing is that Jesus even faced it. You have to think of his best friend, Lazarus, right? They're like, look, Lazarus is sick. He's dying. This is urgent. You need to come heal him, right? But he didn't. somehow we realize that, yes, that is urgent, but the important thing is that they realize I have the power to raise from the dead. That's what's important. And how tempting it is to be like, but this is urgent and this friend needs me right now, right? Like they text you in the middle of the night and you're like, I have to respond to them right now. Or maybe it's like right at night when you're like supposed to, be doing something with your spouse and you're like, oh my gosh, Susie is like crying and like she just had a fight with her husband and I have to text her back right now. But sometimes you don't realize that, like, if we respond to that urgent, maybe the important thing would have been for Susie to go to God and to stop relying on you to give her advice. Maybe the important thing would have been that Susie humble herself and say, hey, husband, like, let's talk this out, right? But if you had responded to the urgent, you might miss not just the important for you, which was your time with your spouse, but also the important of her, of whatever she was supposed to do, repent to her spouse or just go to God, right? And so it's really like this constant, like it's never going to go away, right? We are always going to face the urgent versus the important, right? Those of you that have been married longer than the rest of us, you would say that, right? Like it doesn't go away. It's always there. The only way to truly figure out, like, God, what are you saying that I should do is to seek him. It is to be praying. No, that sounds super churchy, but Jesus did it. So here's the crazy thing. Here's this verse. He gets to the end of his life, and how many years of ministry did he do? Does anyone know? 3.5. That's like not very much time. Really, Jesus? That's like how much time a youth pastor stays at a church, okay? That's like not, except us. We've been here for a while. Okay, so here's what he says, right? Hold on, I'm trying to find the verse. On the night before he died, here's what he said in his prayer to his Father. I have brought you glory on earth by completing the work you gave me to do. Even Jesus could say at the end of 3 years, I've completed your work. Were there people around him that still were sick? Yeah. Were there people around him that still had not heard his message of grace and forgiveness? Yeah. But yet he said his work was completed, and there was hundreds of people who still didn't know the truth. That's what we have to come to. God, what are you calling me to do? There are still going to be things at work that don't get done. But can I honestly say, God, I have completed your work because it's what you asked me to do, right? Like, I can't save every teenager in our youth ministry. And when I try, to like text every single one of them and hold them all up and meet with every single, like I'm just dead. I'm drained. And God has to continually remind me, like, that's not what I called you to do. Like, if I tell you, pray for this person right now or text them right now, then do it. But if I don't, like, you can't be worried, right? Like your kids, you think, I have to help them in every need, and I have to like hold their hand. Like that actually doesn't help them. Actually, helicopter parenting doesn't really help them. There's so many things that we think are important, but the best thing to do is to continually go to God. And maybe that's what we're kind of saying to you guys. Like, we have to have a come to Jesus moment and be like, what is important? What is God calling us to do? Actually, I wasn't going to share this, but this is an illustration I just put in our retreat stuff. That's what he was talking about. I was supposed to write all of our small group material, and I didn't finish, and it was due at 10 a.m. the next morning, and I just threw my computer outside and locked the door and said, I'm done. And he finished it, and it was great. And God gave him an awesome word for the last day. I did. I needed to just be like, I can't do it anymore. But one of the illustrations I felt like was necessary for these students, because they're the same thing. They're busy, and they do so many activities, was about a fruit tree, and just the idea that, if you don't prune and you don't take off even some of the good branches, you just get a ton of tiny apples. Have anybody had that happen? You actually have to like take off some of the good branches and have like less branches so that the fruit can get really big. Anybody a fruit person? Did you know that? It's very interesting. But if you are trying to do too many things, you're just going to have a ton of tiny fruit. But if you sit down as a couple and say, God, like, What are we supposed to do? And prune good branches. Like, I'm not saying that we have to prune the dead stuff. Like, that doesn't even help the tree. You have to actually start pruning branches that are producing fruit that are good in order to just be left with the God things. So it's kind of where we got to. That point of, okay, God, like, what is the good stuff? What is the important stuff? What do we need to do? And so here's kind of my illustration. So you probably have seen this on Facebook. I'm going to do it a little bit different than what they did. But I thought that was sand. Here we go, the sand. Here's what the sand represents. The sand is all of those urgent things. And it's not just the urgent things, it's just like the little things, right? I cannot function until our house is clean. But is it really important that every toy is picked up? I have 4 kids, I'm literally picking up toys all day long. Like, I need to teach them to pick up the toys. I try to teach them, but they're kids. So, but if I don't know if I want to pour it in. It'll be really hard to pour it in. It'll be hard to pour it back out. I had a bag and I left it. We'll take these out. How about that? So, how about this? We do all the urgent things first, right? Like, we got the email, we got to just do it right now. And the kids diaper, we got to do it right now. And we got to feed the kids, and we got to pay the bills, and we got to look at our phone and get all the notifications out. And then it's like, okay, now I have all these other things, hold on, that I have to get done, right? So now I've got to get to work. And so I've got to do whatever it is to get to work. Your commute, that's an awesome thing, right? And you've got to do your kids' activities, or those of you who don't have kids, you're working out. You're like, I have to work out every day. I have to eat right. I have to meal plan. Or if you're a diehard TV fan, we got to watch this show. And they're kind of important. But then you get to this point where your jar is full, and you still have the important things. So here's what these 3 represent: God, your spouse, and your kids, right? And there's not room. See that? See how there's not room anymore? And if we try to do all of those urgent things, if we try to do all those things that they seem important, and then, like, I'll do my spouse at the end, because that's usually what we do, right? Like, at the very end of the day. And even if you're texting all day long, like, honey, we're going to have a date night, by the time you get through all that crap, you're so exhausted, you're just like, so date night tonight is 5 minutes of conversation, and then we're going to bed early. Deal? Deal. Okay. Right? We miss it. We miss it because we did it in the wrong order. So here's what we have to do. The biggest rock, God first. And I'm not a morning person at all. We like to stay up till like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So
Not anymore.
We did for the past couple months.
No more.
It's awful. We stay up late.
We don't like it.
But we still like to stay up till at least midnight every night. And then our kids get us up early. I'm not a morning person. But over and over in Scripture, it talks about how important it is to spend time with God first. If we get the God rock in there first, and we get that communication flowing in the morning, then he can very clearly, it's just easier for him to say, like, hey, say no to that. Like, hey, I know that friend is whatever, just had a baby, and you're like, I have to make a meal for her because she did it for me, or whatever. But maybe God says, hey, it's okay. There's other people that will do it, right? And you hear that gentle voice, that still small voice saying, this is the way, walk in it. You spend that time with God first, and when that project comes up and your boss is like, you are the only one that can do it. And God's like, you're not. You're like, but I am. I'm important, God. But he's like, no, like, you're not the only one. And you say, actually, I just had this thought about so-and-so. Like, do you think that I could maybe help him with it? Because I feel like he would be really good at this. But if we don't start the communication with God in the morning, then we just don't hear those things. Does that make sense? After we do the God one, we got to do our spouse. And maybe you guys this morning is like us. We moved, and 3 out of the 5 days my son was late to school. It's bad. Granted, part of that was we were just getting used to like the commute, and C470 sucks. Hate it. Anyway, if your mornings are like us, you don't have time for your spouse in the morning. Can I just say something funny? Sure. Before we got married, we were talking about how much we were going to have sex. And I was like, we're going to do it in the morning before work. You're going to come home at lunch. We're going to do it. We're going to do it every night.
She was saying that.
That was me. I was like, we're going to do it all the time. It's going to be awesome. Anyway.
The big rocks first. Come on.
I'm not saying that you have time to like do everything you need to do with your spouse in the morning first. I'm not saying that like when I say first means you have to do it in the morning, but it's that you kind of schedule it out. I know that sounds lame, but you schedule like, I am coming home at 5 o'clock today, no matter what happens. No matter what comes up, this is the commitment. I have made a commitment to my spouse that I am coming home at 5. I am only taking one work trip, whatever it is, like one work trip a month, whatever you guys together as a team decide. I am only doing this many days, this many nights away from home a month. And that's the commitment, and I'm doing that first so that when the urgent comes up, I can already say, I'm sorry, this is I can't do any more nights away from my spouse this month. And you just say that. Just like, this is my commitment, and this is what's important. And I believe God will honor us as we do that. So, or if it's just like, scheduling your date night. Like you schedule it out and you say, no matter what, this is happening. Like even if the kids get sick, grandma can come watch a sick kid because we are going out or whatever it is. We're going to put them to bed early and we're going to have a date in the living room. Whatever, you make the commitments to your spouse, even if, I'm not saying you have to do it in the morning. You just like actually you schedule it out, right? And then next is your kids. And maybe for some of you, it's that like, it is a commitment that I'm going to go to all of their soccer games. I don't know. That seems like a lot of games for some of you. I'm like, wow, they're playing again? But hey, if that's what you guys have committed to, it's like this, my family is first. And we are going to read to our kids every night. You know how hard that is? Oh my gosh. There's so many nights I'm like, go straight to bed. No books. No books. And they're like, please. I'm like, no, I cannot handle another itsy bitsy spider. Or like the woman who swallowed a spider. I had to read that last night. I was like, this is the worst nursery rhyme. I don't understand. And then she swallowed a horse. Whatever. And then she died. A horse, of course. She died or something. It's awful. Anyway, whatever your commitment is to your kids, the time, like John said, only he can be a father to our kids. I can't. If he's traveling all the time and I'm continually holding that rock of trying to be the mother and the father, eventually I'm gonna crash. I'm gonna drop his rocks and all of mine. We can only carry our rocks, really, what God has asked us to do, not what our spouse is supposed to do. So, your kids, right? And then you can start putting in your job. We're gonna fix the house up. We gotta fix the car. Somebody has to detail my car because nasty crap got spilled in it in the move. And we gotta fix the house. I don't know. Oh yeah, we could pay somebody. It's like $200. I just looked it up. It's really expensive. Detail your car. Your commitments, whatever else it is, right? Then you can fit them all in. I missed 2, but I was very close. Lastly, the sand. If I had a funnel, which we moved, so I can't find anything in my house right now, but he's gonna very carefully, sorry to the facility dude, he's gonna very carefully fill it. Here's the thing. We put it in, we shake it up. The sand eventually fills in all of the cracks. I would show you, but we're not very. Take a couple out, he says. Ugh, that was too many.
There you go.
All right, there we go. Does that make sense, though? It's like the urgent stuff.
It's supposed to fill it, guys.
Hey, it works if I had a funnel, if I had the funnel.
Go in.
It would. If you can see all this empty space in the bottom, just imagine that it actually worked, that my illustration totally worked.
You didn't practice.
I didn't. I was going to practice it, but then Sam's Club, you have to do it 24 hours in advance. So Jen and I were making sandwiches this afternoon instead of me practicing this. Hope they were good. So here's the thing, all that urgent stuff. We still, for the most part, can get most of the things done that we need to. There's just something about when God's in his place and when our spouse is in their place and when our kids are in their place. There's just that peace, right? And everything just works. And I can't really explain it to you unless you've tried it, because this past couple weeks, I'm like, I just don't have time right now to spend time with you. Like, we stayed up all night cleaning the old house, and then we were moving, and then I was writing that's small group stuff for retreat, and I don't have time. I don't even have time to sleep, God. And to be honest, that's why I crashed yesterday, because I was spiritually empty. And physically I was tired, but I didn't put God at the bottom, because I was like, you know what, God, just give me the next couple weeks. When we put him first, when I just this morning was just like, God, I have to have you. It was like he just pulled me out of the water where I felt like I was drowning yesterday. This morning, as I just sat in his presence before I did anything else, he makes it work out. So it's a super spiritual thing. You're like, seriously, that's the answer? I just need to spend time with God? So I'm done with my part. He's got it.
Close it out, baby. Yeah. So just a couple things that we try to do just practically, and then we'll get into small groups to kind of talk about this. Does anybody relate to this message? Anyone? We're the only ones? Okay. Kind of feel like we're laying ourselves out there. Hopefully somebody else gets this too. Okay. But we try to keep a Sabbath day. Like, you notice that the Ten Commandments have honor the Sabbath. You know what? I think God made a Sabbath because he wants us to stop. He's like, you have to stop. There's a reason why we need sleep, because he designed it so that we can have sleep. And there's a reason that he said honor the Sabbath, and it's not to just pray all day long, but it is to rest. So we try to keep a Sabbath where nobody gets that day of our, like, we don't say yes to that. We say, oh no, actually that's we can't do that day. So I would
we're
recommend,
busy. We don't even tell them why
we're busy.
We're busy that
So
day.
the reason is because we know on the Sabbath day we take a nap. We put the kids down for a nap, and we have our time. That's our time, right? So we take that time, and we're like, that Sabbath time is nobody else's time, it's ours, right?
And our kids.
And our kids, yeah, and it's for our kids as well. So Sabbath, creating margin in your life. Margin's breathing room, where you know you're hitting limits, where you're taking stuff off your plate so that you can have margin in your life to breathe. And also prioritizing, figuring out what's important, what's urgent. And then letting the urgent stuff go sometimes. And just saying no. Like, I'm not showing up to that. Can't make it.
Yep.
For us, keeping church no matter what, we go to church. Not just because we have to be here. We would be here though. We were here before they paid us.
Yeah.
But we make church one of the biggest priorities of our family, and we realized, Matthew 6:33 says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and then all these things will be added unto you." Right here, seek first God's kingdom, and then He adds the rest.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, everything just lines up. So, if you don't go to church, we have 3 services on the weekends.
We do.
Don't just watch online, because it's not the same. Right? We all know that watching online, you just don't get as much out of it, right? Although watching online is a good way to catch up. But make church a priority. So you have your small group notes, 35 minutes or so to discuss.
So this is really a good activity for you guys to even take past the small group and do together. Like, you could fill this top one out, because it should be, the big rock should be Jesus, and the large rock should be what? Your spouse and the rest of your family, like if you have kids. And then the medium rocks, like, there's only 2 lines. So if you guys have to talk together and like, what do we have time for? What is it that God is asking us to do? So it's a good, like talking point. You guys, we can talk it out together, but I would encourage all of you to go home because that's what John and I tried to do last night. Have a come to Jesus moment of like, okay, what do we need to just be like, I'm putting this rock down.
Or schedule that time. Like we don't
Yeah.
have time to talk about it. We're like, well, we will come back to this and we will talk about it.
Yep.
Right.
Cool.
Good.
Guys good?
All right, let's go to
Small groups.
our groups.
Hey, just real quick before I forget, the next time our guest speakers are amazing, Jake and Kim Wood, and then our last week, November 7th, which happens to be my birthday, so remember it. Anyway, all presents are welcome. No, I'm just joking. November 7th, Pastor John and Chris are going to be here, so you